This video is going to give an overview of my finances spreadsheet and its major features. We'll spend some time going over the philosophy of the sheet as well as dive through each individual sheet and show all of the functionality. At its core, this is a category budgeting spreadsheet. You will spend time defining individual categories and subcategories. You will automatically import and analyze data and compare that to your planned allocations through a budget. It breaks all this data down automatically and presents the data in ways that are useful and in ways that you can quickly make decisions on. There's three main sections of the spreadsheet. There's the evaluating section where we're looking at our cash flows in our current spend and projections of how much we will have left by the end of the year. We can also evaluate the state of our savings, where we can see individual savings buckets and account totals. We can break them down by bucket or by asset type, as well as it gives us an overview of our total amount of savings that we have, plus our targets for the current year. The planning phase is made up of a master budget, which you will set up at the beginning of the year, and then month by month allocations where you can add additional data in as the months go on. This gives you some flexibility to be able to reallocate funds. Let's say we had initially had $4,000 paycheck that comes in every month, but at some point we get that raised to $4,300. It will take those values and propagate them through the rest of the sheet as we add new data. If you ever make one of these changes, it will show you that that was a mistake, or it will highlight it in blue. If you ever want to undo that, you can just take the formula, drag it right over. We have a spot to see our status of any loans or debt that we might be carrying. This could be a variety of debt from a variety of sources, but it gives us a way of defining how we want to pay those loans down, and as well as the total interest paid and the payoff time. There's a spot to speculate. This is useful for estimating salary changes or an emergency fund, and gives you a very quick breakdown of all of your funds month by month. This is just an extension of the budget. In the tracking tier of the spreadsheet, we have this Explorer, which is a very powerful tool, which very quickly lets us see all of our spend by category and by month. We can see our totals. We can break these down by category. We can break these down by specific subcategory. And as well, we can do text filtering. So if we want to see how much we spent at McDonald's over the course of the year, we can do that very quickly. In order to get data into Explorer, we import all of our data to these transaction sheets, which break down all of your costs by account and by category. This is actually all done automatically through this import data function. It will look at data that you have in CSV files and automatically bring them into the sheet and categorize them. There is also a thorough set of help documentation that you can open up and read through if you ever have any questions about how you should work through the sheet. The help is usually your best guide to get there. And with that quick summary out of the way, we can dive into the individual functions of each individual sheet. Starting here on the Summary tab, we can see we have this Current Funds box. This lets you select categories to see your current year-to-date spending, the amount that you have left in these categories as of today, and a projected amount left by the end of the year, assuming no further spending. There's these pie charts right above which show our expense ratios. The inner ring is our projected allocations for that year, which is how much we said we would have in each type of major category or classification. The outer ring is based off of your real spending year to date, which is driven by all of this data here. We can also see over time, we can add in like course data to see our trends. What we'd like to see here is that this green line, this savings, is going up over time, while our red line, or discretionary fund, is relatively flat. We can use this to adjust for inflation if we want to see those values. You can think of summary as your primary landing page for your budget, as long as your ratios are in bounds that you're happy with and you have enough money left over in each of your individual categories, you're doing probably just fine. The savings spreadsheet has a little bit more going on in it. It allows you to break down your savings by what I call our buckets. Those buckets may live in various accounts. For example, a high yield savings account may have various mini buckets inside of it, where like this total 13,000 might be the total value of your savings account. If you don't prefer this, you can always break it down just to like your bucket could just be your high yield savings account. It could be that simple. But for my part, I like to break it down with a little bit more detail. You will set the initial values for each of your accounts and buckets at the beginning of the year. The progress is tracked automatically through data sources driven from all transactions. There's also a spot where you can log periodic growth for accounts, like the brokerage accounts. I usually just go through a couple times a year and just do a quick math on how much the account has grown. There's also a section down here which gives you a rough ability to plan. You could set goals, target amounts that you need to achieve those goals, and a end of year goal to achieve that. You put in your current progress, and it'll just calculate how much you need to put away every month for each category to achieve all of those goals in time. Budget is kind of where the rubber meets the road with this spreadsheet. You're given a master reference column where you can put in either yearly or by month values for your budget. These will get broken down all the way through the bottom of the sheet, and that will sum total for like a complete net payout every month and a cushion. This is the amount that you have left every month after everything is complete. The master reference is what you sort of plan to do. You can change these numbers around freely. The allocations are what the spreadsheet considers to be truth. So every time we roll into a new month, we can add a new column here from the dropdown. It will take the values from the previous month and just copy and paste them right over. This is just a formula. So if you were to ever change these, it will take those values and push them forward. So let's say we got a slight pay raise. It will take those and push them through the rest of the sheet. It will highlight blue to let you know that, hey, you've modified this cell. Now this is just plain text instead of this fancy formula. If you ever want to undo that behavior, you can always take the formula from the previous cell, drag it right back over, and that'll reset everything. But this raise was good for us. You can see that this user had been overspending on all of their allocations, which can be okay in the short term as long as we get that balanced out by the end of the year. But that few $100 raise ended up balancing us out completely. You can see, though, that this isn't quite enough, and even the projected value is not going to make this cushion go positive. So we either need to reduce our spend in some categories, or we need to find more money. You can see that the spreadsheet is based on categories and subcategory budgeting. So for each line item in this master budget, we can assign it a category. So the savings Roth IRA is associated with the master category savings, comma, Roth IRA. You don't need to break this down individually for every account. You can see that all of these subscriptions are just based on the subscriptions category, and that's plenty of detail for me. My philosophy, I have these sections or categories called savings. Savings I usually consider longer term goals with higher values, and they are typically moved out of a checking account into some sort of external account like Vanguard or Synchrony High Yield Savings Account, or another external account. These are considered savings, which they would grow over time and have very infrequent drawdowns from these external accounts. Pools, however, are smaller buckets where you can set up savings for a specific line item for the year, like car maintenance. You may set aside $1,000 for. These usually don't have physical balance transfers that will move money from one account to another. You'll just kind of squirrel away $84 a month in your checking account. Um, so there's an easy way to track and spend down off of those pools. And we did discuss cushion briefly. Cushion is the very bottom of your account. As long as these numbers are green and you are meeting your allocations, it means you're not overspending. This can go red for some time, but what we really want to see is that by the end of the year, cushion has gone back to green. It means that you have spent less than you thought you would throughout the course of the year. For anyone carrying debt, I have this simple loans amortization calculator. It's a place where you can put in your specific loans, their current balances, interest rates, and minimum monthly payments. The spreadsheet will estimate how long it will take to pay them off, given a few different strategies. Avalanche is the best strategy that you can use. It will categorize your loans by interest rate and focus on having you pay off your highest interest rate debt soonest. It will give you a payoff date that says March 2028, as well as a time in months and the total amount of interest you've paid. This calculator does assume that you're putting in a continuous monthly payment over the course of all of the loans. If that changes for any reason, you can always put an adjustment in this additional column here. So perhaps in May of 2026, we got a $8,000 windfall. You'll see that this will reduce our interest paid and payoff time as soon as we apply it. So we saved ourselves a few $1,000s and a few months on the life of our loans. Speculation is a place to do some very rough planning for the future. It's mostly a copy of budget, but lets you play around in a slightly more dynamic environment. You can quickly set, instead of setting categories, we just set classifications. That gives us our major pie chart breakdowns for that data. What we like to see is over time, as our salaries go up, that our savings rate is increasing. We also like to make sure that our cost of living isn't changing dramatically year over year. I've commonly used this to plan out emergency funds, doing kind of a bare bones spending per category to see what it would take and what I would require to have a 6-month emergency fund. Explorer is one of the more powerful spreadsheets when you need to really dive into the data. You can look at your spend by major category. So this would be all food for the year is $3,000, or just the grocery spend. This is broken down into an all tab and then individual tabs for each individual month of expenses. It also gives you a bar chart breakdown to see how your spending has changed over time. We can sort by category. We can sort by subcategory as well. So we have our fun category, or maybe our fun bikes category. If we were to choose the major category of just fun, it would roll all of that up into one. If you're actively checking your subscriptions, this is an easy way to see what's coming in and what's coming out every month, what is considered a continuous expense, and there's always the ability to sort directly by text. So if we wanted to see our expenses in RAI over the course of the year, or if we wanted to see our monthly spend on McDonald's, for instance, we can quickly type that in, see how we're doing. When you've successfully pulled out a category or subcategory, you can also see how much you have spent, how much was allocated for that, and how much is available. So you can see that we're currently quite a bit over on our fund spend. So having all of this data in Explorer is great, but we should talk about how you actually get this data into the Explorer. Everything you've seen so far are just fancy spreadsheet functions that import all of the data. Some of these are quite complicated, some of them are fairly simple, but they are all just normal functions that anyone could use inside of Google Sheets. The importer and transaction manager, these are all done through what I call finance functions. These are actually code that runs in the background and are accessed through this drop-down menu. This lets you add new transaction sheets, import data, categorize that data, perform some other functions on the data, and then publish it finally to the rest of the spreadsheet. So as you're working in here, all of this is virtual data until you hit finance functions publish. In order to get data into the sheet, you need to have a folder structure similar to this. You'll have your finances, and then in the same folder as finances, you'll have a folder called importer. Inside importer, we can put CSV files, which are directly from our banks. They will have headers, which tell you what all of the data is for. You may have a few headers as well. There's a separate sheet inside finances that gives you the rules on how these are to be imported. But once you set up those rules, they will hold for the remainder of your use. One very useful function of the spreadsheet is that there is no double jeopardy. So when you're importing data, if there are dates that overlap, it will always check to see if those date descriptions and costs are the same, and it will not import or count any of that data twice against you. You can feel free to overlap as much as you want, and as long as the values haven't changed from one import to another, you will never double count any of your transactions. Once we've imported our data into the importer folder, we can go through the add sheet function. This is going to copy a sheet and create a new one. We'll call this one demo, where this one was January to June. That's going to create this new blank sheet based off of a template where it breaks up our 3 accounts and presets all of the data and formatting. This is where we'd be able to select all of our drop downs. Thankfully, we don't need to do that manually. We can instead come to finance functions, import data. It will go into that importer folder, scrub the CSVs for data, extract the appropriate columns, and then paste them into the sheet. It'll then take a second to analyze all of those columns based on their descriptions, and it will try to apply categories to them. It takes some time to set up your filters, but once they're done, they're usually quite good. You can see pretty much everything here has a definition. This is kind of a hard view to look at. We can always go into finance functions, sort by category. That will break this all down by category correctly. So you can see we do have some undefined transactions like this Prime video. That was like a fun purchase. We have a few things in PayPal that get flagged as temporary. This is because the sheet doesn't exactly know how to define them. But for me, I know that this was in fact fun bikes here, as well as sports basement. This is some pants that were purchased. I usually keep hygiene or like clothing and haircuts under a hygiene category. We have a few other bike expenses that we can put in here, as well as these Amazon purchases were also bike-related purchases for this individual. So with that, most everything has been categorized appropriately. There are a few aspects that we do want to make some corrections on. You see we have this very large untracked category. Untracked is nice for when we have recurring balance transfers like this -30, +30. It doesn't need to go anywhere, or if you're paying down a credit card. So what you'll often see is you'll have like a -$1,300 from a checking account, and then you'll see a +$1,300 in a credit card account. Those could be in their own balance transfer category, but for me it's simpler to just leave them untracked. But you can see we do have some unintended behavior here, is that this like recurring transfer keyword is also flagging these periodic distributions through Vanguard, just about here. So you can see online transfer to Vanguard, $500, some at $300, some at $750. So we have this filters that we can see here. So this is the like driving backend for all of the automatic categorization, where you assign your categories and subcategories, and then you tie text strings to match those. So we can see these are matched first in, first out. So anything high up on the list is going to trigger first, and anything at the bottom of the list has the lowest priority of getting a match. What you can see here is that this untracked category has this recurring online payment transfer. This language here is what has been flagging these online transfers to Vanguard as untracked expenses. It would be a pain to have to come in here every month and then set these as savings. So what we can do is set an exclusion flag on the word Vanguard for these transactions. You'll see that these other recurring transfers have a different reference. They get to some savings account. So we can type in the exclusion up here on the untracked with the percent sign. So we go percent Vanguard, and that's going to, if it sees the Vanguard text, it will skip the untracked category and allow them to fall through, in this case, to savings, where we have Vanguard being tracked here. So with that, we should be able to finance functions recategorize. Note that this will not work because the sheet is locked. It gives you this pop-up here. Anytime you do an automatic function, it will default to locking the sheet. That way you don't accidentally undo your work. So we can unlock the sheet, go finance functions categorize. This has also asked us if we want to overwrite manually adjusted categories. When we cleaned up those undefined transactions earlier, the sheet has noticed that we did that. We typically do not want to do that, so we can hit no, don't redefine our previously defined categories. But you can see now that this does all come out correctly to savings. This is great behavior, but it's still not perfect. These are three different values, 500, 300, and 750. They may actually have different purposes in our spreadsheet. So if we want to set up cost-based splitting of categories and subcategories, we can do that as well with another set of keywords. That looks similar to this. So we saw that we had a $500, a $300, and a $750 transfer. We may say that the $300 goes to a Roth. We can type that as $300. Then we use the colon to separate, and then we can add text. The text is important. If a dollar value does not also have a text value, it will not match. So with this, we can say $300 with the text or substring Vanguard would go to the Roth IRA. We could say that $750 from Vanguard goes to investments, and that $500 goes to emergency fund. And with those redefined, we can once again come back to finance functions, unlock, or we can come back to the spreadsheet, unlock it, and hit recategorize. From there, we should see these values correct themselves into their correct buckets. Investments, Roth IRA, emergency fund. This is great behavior. This is doing exactly what we want it to do, and it's catching 90+% of all transactions. We could talk about some more advanced features that are very useful for folks with roommates. There's a few costs here that have gone to the square up category. You see PG&E, which is like our gas servicer, CV SAN, which is the trash servicer, and you can see a host of Costco, Walmart, Safeways, Costco up here as well, are all set to square up. That's in filters here. The very first column is or the very first row is a square up row. You can set which keys would be sent over there. And these are things that we are going to split between us and one other roommate. If you have data that is marked as square up, you can come to finance functions, square up, upload. That's going to hunt through the sheet, find anything that's been marked as square up. It will dump it into a new sheet where it is then appropriately categorized and then split by percent. So you can set up default split percents for certain values. It will bring in all of that data. It will take the original cost, adjust it by your split percent, round up a total value that you are owed by your roommate or partner, and it will then recategorize. An important thing to note here is that the adjusted cost is what will be pushed back to the sheet. This is so that you don't see a massive overspend in grocery when you get when you then get reimbursed from another individual. You can go ahead and recategorize as well while you're here. So let's say this was actually a vacation expense, and you can see this vacation expense has 100% split for me in this instance, where my roommate or partner would have zero split in that. So if we wanted to paste that down for a few values, you can see the total owed is modified. Once you're happy with the values, you can send that data right back with SquareUp download, and it will send all of this data back to your previous sheet and readjust their categories just like that. Just like import won't do double jeopardy, the SquareUp won't do double jeopardy either, so you never have to worry about double charging another individual for their portion of funds. Once we're happy that all of the data looks right, we can go to Finance Functions Publish. This will send that data to the rest of the spreadsheet. What we can do in here just as a test is put in a random expense in grocery. That might be like grossly large. We might say like $42,000 spend in groceries. And this we can just use this to like quickly prove that the publish function is working. Once you hit publish, we have automatic focus switching on, so it's going to hide that spreadsheet and then kick you right back over to summary. You can see because we had that huge grocery expense, these living expenses are going to have gone way up. If we go over to Explorer and we find grocery, we should be able to see that large expense right at the bottom here, the 616 called test. That could also have been searched for by text, and they would pop right up. If you see data like that, you know that you've probably made a mistake. You can always come back into that data and correct it or scrub it. So maybe this is actually only minus $42 for test. Every time you hit publish, it's going to regenerate all of your transactions through your entire sheet. So you can always go back and change and modify data later. So now you see this test correctly says minus $42, and our spend in summary has gone down to something much more reasonable. So that's the primary functions of the sheet. We've seen just about everything that it can do. I hope that this could be a useful tool for you. I have a couple of other videos that have a much deeper dive into the onboarding process. It does take some time to like add yourself to the sheet. A lot of the headache is in setting up the colors for all of these custom drop downs. But all of that is outlined in the help docs and in the video. So if you want to onboard, I'd expect that process to take 2 to maybe 3 hours, depending on how much data, historical data you want to bring in. But once you're set up, then the actual monthly workflow is pretty quick. It only takes about 10 minutes. See ya.